So good morning and welcome again to our Sunday series. There's always a sense of naughty satisfaction when a contestant who's rather full of themselves comes onto MasterChef and is out in the first round. No more than they deserve, we think rather unpleasantly to ourselves. Or perhaps it's just me that thinks like that. So what of Jesus arriving in Jerusalem on Palm Sunday to a fanfare of praise, only to be crucified on Friday to a chorus of jeers? Well, it was a staged event. Jesus had already arranged to borrow the donkey in advance. He'd set up the whole performance himself. Some of his disciples put their outer cloaks onto the donkey's back as a kind of instant saddle, and others laid their cloaks on the ground as a welcome mat, an ancient equivalent of a red carpet greeting. This seems to have given them, the disciples, the excuse that they wanted for a time of exuberant praise. Luke's Gospel tells us that they praised God aloud for all the miracles that they had seen. One of those miracles had happened just a mile or so behind them in the little village of Bethany. Jesus, only a short time before, had raised a friend of his called Lazarus from the grave 4 days after he had died. All of the people of the area had heard about it, as had the residents of Jerusalem just 2 miles away. In fact, Lazarus alive had caused real consternation amongst the religious authorities because it was such convincing evidence of the power that Jesus had. They'd even planned to kill Lazarus in order to get rid of him. That's being open-minded for you. But what was Jesus up to? This public self-promotion seems to be completely out of character for him. Very often in the past, his ministry had been deliberately self-effacing. He'd kept things low-key. He told people not to refer to him as the Messiah. Some of them he told to keep quiet about the healing that he'd given to them. He refused on a number of occasions to perform miracles just to impress people. Now, though, it seems as though he's unveiling himself publicly as the Messiah. And that indeed is precisely what he is doing. He wants to be noticed, and he wants to be noticed as the Messiah who has arrived, and that he was on a mission in Jerusalem. No one but he knew what that mission was, despite all of his attempts to explain it to his disciples. His mission was to die for us. Palm Sunday was not a mistake, and nor was Good Friday. It was a staged event. It was also a revelatory event. There was a lot of messianic fever amongst the Jewish people at this time. Palestine was an occupied nation. Pagan Roman soldiers in uniform were stationed on every street corner in Jerusalem. They were also living permanently in the garrison fortress of Antonia, right alongside the temple. The hope amongst the Jews was that when the Messiah came, he would either raise an army to drive them out, or that he would be so powerful that just raising a finger to the Romans would be enough for them to flee. They were completely right that the Messiah was about to come. But they were completely wrong about what he would do when he arrived. Jesus is about to educate them. In this simple procession on the back of a donkey, he reinforces in the minds of all who witness the event what is the enduring nature of God. He is humble. That is utterly incredible. It's still hard to grasp despite our familiarity with this piece of history. God is humble. He has all that power, the power of the Creator, the power of the one who has put stars into space, who has caused all that is to exist, who has such intelligence, who is omnipotent, who is omniscient, who is eternal. And yet he limits himself by his own choice. He allows his created beings complete freedom, independent of him. He even now places himself at the mercy of those created beings, risking himself, trusting himself into their hands, permitting them to crucify him if they so choose. What a God! This cannot be, and yet it is. Here comes Jesus, slightly ridiculous, with his feet almost touching the ground on either side of this young donkey and riding into the city of Jerusalem. This is omnipotent power under absolute control. It was a staged event. It was a revelatory event. It was a confrontational event. Jesus got precisely the response that he wanted. As he comes down the Mount of Olives on the back of the donkey with all of the shouting going on, he could be seen from every corner of Jerusalem just across the valley. It was like a huge amphitheatre with the sound of their voices being carried across to the streets of Jerusalem. The natural question being asked is, who is this? To which the reply is given, this is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. The events of Palm Sunday invite a question and a verdict from each one who hears about what happened that day. Who is this? Have you decided? Is he just one more in a long line of overconfident men competing for attention? Or is he the Messiah? Some people have an image of God being on the back foot when it comes to questions being asked. They think that they have come up with the perfect question which will silence him once and for all. Questions like, who made God? Or, who did Cain marry? Or, if God made the world, then why didn't he do a better job of it? They think that they've come up with the ultimate puzzle, which God will never answer. What arrogance that is. As if when we do finally meet God face to face, we will be putting him on trial. On that day, we will be unable to stand and unable to speak. We will be on our faces before his glory and his holiness. Just one look at him will be the answer to all of our questions, and one word from him will silence all of our doubts. There's a famous quote from Winston Churchill, which always chills me a little when I hear it. I am prepared to meet my Maker, he said. Whether my Maker is prepared for the great ordeal of meeting me is another matter. I don't know the context in which he spoke those words, nor whether there was a smile on his lips when he did so. But he expresses the attitude of many people who think that one day they will take on God and get him to explain himself. The boot is on the other foot. One day we will meet God and have to explain ourselves. So this event of Palm Sunday, it was a staged event, it was a revelatory event, it was a confrontational event, but it was also a prophetic event. If you've read Luke's account, you will read that Jesus paused during his procession into the city. He paused on the side of the Mount of Olives and he looked over the city that was below him on the opposite hill. There's a church today standing on the very site, a beautiful church called Dominus Flevit. Jesus wept. At that sight, Jesus prophesied about what was going to happen eventually to the city. "The days will come upon you," said Jesus, "when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side." That was what he said about Jerusalem. In 70 AD, the prophecy was fulfilled. Under the leadership of Titus, the Romans besieged the city of Jerusalem after the Jewish rebellion. Finally breaking through the walls, they conducted a terrible massacre. Just 40 years after Jesus spoke these words. It didn't need to happen. The residents of Jerusalem could have made a different choice. And instead of rejecting Jesus as their Messiah, they could have welcomed him. The lesson from all of this? Be sure that you have the right answer to Palm Sunday's question: who is this?